Hello, welcome to Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid, the podcast that explores sustainable solutions for the most pressing issues facing our planet and communities today. I'm Planet Aid's Communications Manager, Haley Chitty, and I'm going to turn it over to our host, Planet Aid's Communication and Content Specialist, Monica Johnson. I'll jump back in later to ask a few follow-up questions. Monica, take it away.
Thank you, Haley, and welcome to Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. I am Monica Johnson, and I'm going to be your guide for this journey as we take challenging situations and try to simplify them. And it's also an opportunity to learn from incredible individuals and organizations at the forefront of developing and implementing sustainable solutions. Change is not only possible, but essential, and it begins with understanding. Today, we're talking to Kristy Morris, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Funds2Org. And Kristy is going to be attending Garson and Shaw's Reuse Before Recycling event in Panama. And that message, of course, reuse before recycling, is not any kind of foreign message to her because she helps organizations do just that. But before we get into all of that, first, welcome to Sustainable Solutions, Kristy.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you, Haley. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. So, just for anybody who hasn't really heard about Funds2Org, can you give us a little background on it? And what's the scope of your work as CMO there?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, where do I start?
We're jumping right into it.
So as the CMO of Funds2Orgs, I am very honored to wear a lot of hats. I am a hat girl, and I am usually wearing a hat, and I wear a lot of hats and roles at Funds2Orgs and our suite of fundraising social enterprises. And Funds2Orgs is a alternative fundraising platform. Essentially, Funds2Orgs provides educational resources and materials for fundraising, but our main program is our shoe drive fundraiser. We help nonprofits, schools, churches, anyone who's looking to fundraise. We provide them with a different alternative revenue stream. So instead of asking people to, open their wallets, write a check, click that donate button online, instead we're asking them to clean out their closets of gently worn, used, and new shoes. A shoe drive fundraiser, to be honest, 7 years ago, I had absolutely never heard of Funds2Orgs or shoe drive fundraising. But when I was a kid and I was growing up, I did the door-to-door sales. I sold cookie dough. I sold wrapping paper. I did all of those things. I sold merch out of the Christmas catalog,
Wow.
to the grandparents and the family members. But I was very honored to find Funds2Orgs and get to know the brand 7 years ago, and I have been here ever since. My job at Funds2Orgs is really all-encompassing, but my job is to help people understand what we do and why it matters. Specifically, I focus on branding and storytelling and helping strategize with nonprofits and schools and people that are looking to raise money for their missions and their different causes, whether that's here at home in America or abroad. As a CMO, I focus mostly on marketing, but I help organizations tell their stories. I support our marketing and our social media and design team to help those stories be told in visual formats for our partners, creating custom marketing materials, press releases, email templates, all of that. But really, I'm here to help inspire and drive results and connect people to our mission.
Yes, you really do wear a lot of hats, Kristy. Yes, shout out to that hat right there because I really love it. It is beautiful. And like I said, it looks, well, before we got on the air, I said it looks very sustainable. So with your background of green. So very good. Yes. And now she's modeling it for us.
It's actually my wedding hat. I wore this on my wedding day.
Oh my goodness. I would love to see this picture, Kristy.
I'll send you one after the call.
Yeah. So you gave us a lot in that Funds2Org is we have a lot of similarities with Planet Aid, obviously, because we collect clothes and shoes, but you help organizations to collect shoes. The program Sneakers for Good. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Sneakers for Good, I like to call it the sporty cousin of Funds2Orgs. So it is a part of our social enterprises. We have a few brands that fall underneath the Funds2Orgs like group umbrella, but Sneakers for Good is the sporty cool cousin. Sneakers for Good specifically works with runners. So they focus in on the Athletica community. We partner with major marathons like the St. Jude Marathon, Boston Marathon, Marine Corps Marathon, and we help runners and athletes give their used sneakers, specifically sneakers, a second life. But that can be, let's say, a run specialty store. They will have a new sustainability initiative, and so they're collecting used sneakers from their customers. Well, we will pay that store for the used sneakers so that they can support their local run clubs, their youth programs, all sorts of things like that. But we partner with run specialty stores, gyms, marathons, run clubs, anything under the sun. If you're running and you're active, we'll partner with you and we'll help give your sneakers a second life.
I love that, and I imagine that the people that you work with really love that too. To be able to give their shoes or their sneakers that second life, and to know that it's going to someone who really does need it. Can you talk a little bit about that and that reaction, and how when you're talking to the people who you're partnering with, what's been some of those reactions?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's not like we ever lose a partner. What's great about our programs are they are completely free. So there's really no pushback on that end, but we hear such positive comments and feedback from the community, not only from our partners, but also, sometimes we'll get that mention in a press release, or we'll show up on a community board or on a news station, just secondhand because we are out in the community and supporting our partners. A lot of the feedback is that people don't like to throw their sneakers away, and I'm very thankful for that. Same with Planet Aid. We're so
Right.
thankful that people aren't throwing their textiles in the trash. You
Hmm.
know, in order to support the circular and the reuse economy, we want to keep resources in use for as long as possible. And that's what Funds2Org Sneakers for Good and Planet Aid does, is we're giving them a second life. And so I think a lot of people are very happy that we have these initiatives, and there are people and nonprofits and social enterprises like ours that can provide them with that outlet to get rid of their used shoes and their used clothing responsibly.
How do you help organizations to utilize the information um, gained from their sustainability or impact reports? Because I'm imagining that when they are giving these shoes away, they want to know how it affects others, and how it makes their company look.
Great question. So yes, I love sustainability. I love impact reports. There are so many incredible organizations that are out there, and they provide this. And I think that kind of transparency with reports specifically is so important. But all too often, they sit in a PDF and they don't get opened and they never see the light of day. So, one of the things that we do with our partners is we encourage them to use them to tell their story. So instead of, just saying, "Oh, we kept sneakers out of landfills, we kept shoes and clothing out of landfills," instead of just saying that, we ask them to use that real world data. So we saved 285 pairs of sneakers from landfills. But that's also, hey, we saved 142,000 gallons of water by keeping those sneakers in the reuse economy. It's about showing why those numbers matter, and it's about showing how it helps their local community too. So turning stats into engagement and using them in blogs and social media, in email campaigns, to make sure that the impact, isn't just measured, but it's felt.
Right, because after you read a report, a lot of times numbers are just numbers after a while, and it's kind of like useless in your mind, in your heart. You don't know one stat from the other. But I love that you say that this is a part of a whole storytelling scheme, which allows people to take it in, and it becomes more personal to them.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most important things that nonprofits can do today, is to focus on their storytelling and to convey their why. Because if you can't convey your why, you're missing out on support from donors, businesses, partnerships, volunteers, and just your community in general. You need to be able to communicate that why, and to do it effectively, sometimes you need a little help.
Very good. And that was my next question. Another part of your position is helping nonprofits convey their purpose and impact. So, why is that significant to their outcomes socially, professionally, and financially?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is that the emotional connection to a nonprofit's mission, that why, leads to better funding. And if you want them to feel connected to it, you need to explain why it matters to them. You need to explain where their part is in your story. And if you're not telling your story in a clear and concise way, you risk blending into the background. You risk being not seen, and you need to stand out. There's so much happening nowadays, and you need to continue to find ways to connect with people at all levels, especially with this younger generation that's coming up. We've got the Gen Zers right behind me, and then now I think we're on the alpha.
Alpha.
Yeah, we're on the alpha generation, and
Mhm.
it seems like the younger generation too is having this moment of wanting to feel that they have a purpose and they are connected. And nonprofits who can't convey their why, they miss out on that connection. You got to stop the scroll. You hear that all the time, especially in my marketing world. You got to stop the scroll, and a big part of that is sharing your mission. Engage, take action.
How do you integrate sustainability into your marketing strategies at Funds2Org? Can you share some examples of how this approach has been communicated through your blogs and storytelling?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, for some people, sustainability really just becomes this overarching word. Obviously, it has several meanings that you're trying to convey. We're on a podcast right now called Sustainable Solutions, and sustainable solutions can mean a lot of things. It can mean, living sustainability, but it can also mean financial sustainability or
Mhm.
sustainability. But when you're focusing on that real world storytelling, and let's say we're working with a Funds2Orgs partner. Let's say it's a high school music booster. I can think of one right now off the top of my head. They've been partnered with us for 5 years now, and they've raised 20 grand through their annual shoe drive fundraisers.
Wow.
And telling that story and letting people know that, hey, the shoes have made this sort of impact for our booster. It helped us purchase these new band uniforms. It helped us send our kids to the state tournament. I think that's a huge thing. And the same thing with our micro enterprise partners too, which you guys support too through the reuse economy. You got to be able to tell their stories as well, because their stories are also being impacted. It's not just the partners and the people that are donating clothes to Planet Aid or collecting sneakers and shoes for a shoe drive. You got to talk about the people that are benefiting on the back end as well. So I think of our micro entrepreneur partner Sylvia. We've told her story several times throughout the year. She lives in Haiti, and before she was a partner with Funds2Orgs, she was making $2 a day, and for us, that is a huge, shocking number. In America, you can't survive on $2 a day.
Right.
But after partnering with Funds2Orgs and becoming one of our micro enterprise partners, she's making $60 a day. So
Wow.
highlighting the sustainability wins on all fronts in the circular and reuse economy is super important, because it makes sustainability feel doable in everyday life.
Christy, you talked about Generation Alpha and Generation Z, and just thinking about that, they really are very good at telling their story because they've kind of grown up in the generation where they put their stories online. So, just with these organizations, how are you finding that you're helping them to tell their stories, but how are they afterwards kind of telling their own stories on their own platforms after that?
With the younger generations, they've very readily adapted to the technology a lot faster than maybe, let's say, my generation. I grew up, with dial-up internet. Okay, that was what I grew up with as a teenager. I grew up with AIM. I grew up with these chat rooms and different things like that. And I think these younger generations are so much more adapted to technology, and they pick it up so much faster. So it's easier for them from a storytelling stance to tell their stories on social media, to get their voice out there, to talk to strangers on the internet, which we were never allowed to do when I was growing up. But I think they do such a better job for it. And in order to reach these, you have to be in those spaces. I think from a storytelling perspective, you need to be doing all of the things. So you need to be doing the traditional marketing. You need to be doing the direct mail. Even though it is a little bit outdated, people still open mail. A lot of people, didn't get mail growing up because of the way technology has kind of come on and taken over all of the ways we communicate. I mean,
Right.
U.S. Postal Service sends you pictures of your mail before it drops in the mail.
That's true. I have that.
Right. Yeah. So I think that you need to have all of these things to tell your story. But I think that, depending on your audience, you have to choose which funnels those are and focus on them to reach the right audience type when it comes to, telling those stories.
Very good. And how does your work with Funds2Org not only highlight the organization's mission, but also inspire others to adopt sustainable practices in their businesses or their personal lives?
Yeah. Well, I think the main thing is that old school golden rule, lead by example. And I think that is one thing that we do well at Funds2Orgs and Sneakers for Good is we always try to lead by example, and we always try to be as transparent as possible. So one thing that we do is we choose a local charity and we give back to them every single year. So we do a big fundraiser as a team, and we give back locally. We also, when we can, will support local charities here in and around Orlando, Florida. And then other things that we do is we're not against other fundraisers and other fundraising companies. So if we have, a team member whose kid is selling Girl Scout cookies, we're buying a case. So leading by example, I think is one of the most important things, but also incorporating sustainable packages and processes. So I know for us, all of the materials that we utilize in both of our programs, we make sure that they're 100% recyclable. We actually, one of our gift ideas for partners and for conventions and expos was tote bags. Well, we came to find out that the reusable tote bags weren't recyclable. And I was like, oh, that's actually
not great.
That's not great. Here we are being a sustainable company and our tote bags aren't recyclable. And, let's say, it's been worn through and they want to get rid of it. I don't want that to go and end up in our landfill. So we actually found a new supplier that makes 100% recyclable bags. And so basically what it comes down to is the way the bag is made. If there's certain stitches that are happening in it, or if there's cardboard inserts and different things like that, it can only be processed a certain way. So leading by example and taking the initiative to ensure that everything we're doing is as sustainable as possible is very important to us.
I love that you care about the details. And also just going back to something that you said, you're not opposed to other organizations and their fundraising. I love that too, because that's kind of what we at Planet Aid think as well, because obviously Funds2Org is collecting shoes, kind of like Planet Aid collects shoes and clothes. But at the same time, we all have a very similar purpose in wanting to make sure that these clothes can be reused or these shoes can be reused and it doesn't end up in a landfill. So whoever's doing that, they're not an enemy to us. So I love that. And, if people can work together more like that, then that means that we can accomplish so much more. So,
I cannot agree with that statement more. I wish everyone kind of felt that way, in our industry. But I think that, we all have a part to play and every step we take matters. And, even just, collaborating on this podcast is just incredible. It creates community in a space where, someone would say, oh, well, you guys both do the same thing. Well, we're both slightly different, and we both have different missions, and we both just support different things. So like we're all just trying to make the world a better place, but here we are collaborating and doing it together.
Right. I love that. So, yes. Could you discuss any specific challenges that you've encountered when promoting sustainability through digital platforms? And also, can you help us to know how you overcome these obstacles and maintain authenticity and engagement in your content?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I'm sure you guys have heard of greenwashing, right?
Yes.
Okay, have you guys heard of green hushing?
No, I have not.
Yeah,
I
okay,
love new words.
right.
Tell us more.
New buzzword, share it with the team today. So I heard about green hushing at a conference last year. It was a conference called Fashion Takes Action. It was an incredibly informative conference that was held up in Canada, and I heard a whole piece on greenwashing and green hushing. So what's interesting is both are bad. Okay,
Mhm.
let me tell you why. So greenwashing is when a company will throw around, for those who don't know, greenwashing is when a company throws around sustainability terms with no real action behind it or no real transparency behind what that sustainable mission, goal, or action is. That's when people get a little bit skeptical about how sustainable is your business, etc.
Right.
So green hushing is slightly different. Green hushing is when you are being sustainable, but you're not discussing it for fear of backlash. So what you're doing is you're actually not letting people know. You're not informing the public. You're not informing your consumer base that you're doing all these right things. You are being sustainable. You have a sustainable practice, mission, solution, processes, but you're not letting people know that you're doing it because you're afraid of any backlash that could come back, similar with, the backlash of greenwashing. So green hushing is also not good. If you are doing something, you want to be transparent about what it is you're doing and let people know like the importance of it and why you're doing it in the first place. What is, the intentionality behind it? Um,
Do people think that they're just when they're green hushing, do they think, or organizations, do they think that they're just not doing enough and that's the backlash that they'll suffer, or they're not doing it right, or what what are some of these motivations?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both of those, and I think it's people being concerned that they're not doing enough, or that that they if they come out and say they are, they'll get slammed for greenwashing,
Mm.
like talking like so much of it up without providing that back end data. But I think that that's the bittersweet rub of the digital space that we live in today is that while we can get so much content and so many stories out there, we also have, the keyboard warriors that hide behind their
The
comments.
the cancelers.
Yeah, so they become very concerned about what other people are gonna say.
Mhm.
Um, I think real numbers, real stories is how you are 100% transparent and try to keep things human. I love AI. I use AI in my day-to-day life and in my job, but I think it's very important to always keep the human aspect in everything you do. And sustainability isn't just about your people and your processes. It's also about your community and how you live your life day to day. You got to be authentic about it.
Very good. So you say be authentic. So tell me a little bit about how you use this authenticity with impact marketing. Tell us a little bit about that and how you help organizations to show up and gain the right attention needed to drive their missions.
Yeah. So I would say one of the biggest things is we provide campaign planning and we provide a fundraising coach. Specifically on the Funds2Org side, we do
Mhm.
provide a sustainability team on Sneakers for Good side. But so much of Sneakers for Good is on autopilot, whereas Funds2Orgs is really kind of your partner in fundraising. So having a dedicated fundraising coach that will take you from the start of your fundraiser to the end and kind of hold your hand and walk you through how to submit a press release and walk you through, how to put together a volunteer sign-up sheet and how you start with your sphere of influence. And I love this term. It was coined by one of my coworkers, Jim. He's been with the company like 10 years now. He's amazing. But he always, when he works with our fundraising partners, he always talks about their sphere of influence. And, whether you are asking people to go write you a check or you're asking them to clean out their closet of clothing and shoes, you're going to start with your home base. You're going to start with what's in your home first. Then you're going to slowly start to branch out. You're going to go to your close friends, your close family. You're going to go to your business or maybe your place of worship, maybe your local community center or your kids' soccer team and their schools. And you're going to start to kind of grow out from that home base. So your sphere of influence gets larger. And so providing that campaign planning and that dedicated fundraising coach who can help them formulate what their story is, because everyone's story is different. Everyone's story is unique. And while we can provide email templates and press release templates and social media templates, you really need to have someone there that can help you put those words on paper and then show you how to share that out into the world. When they see that impact, they're more likely to engage with you. And that's why I think impact marketing is so important, because it shows the difference that you're making. So, whether you're doing a clothing drive or a shoe drive, where are you at in relation to your goal? Are you 50% there? Are you 25% there? And why does that matter? What will, collecting shoes mean to you? And how will the funding support your school team, your church, whatever it is you're fundraising for?
That's awesome. That's really good. I'm sure that the organizations that work with you are very thankful for that kind of help. So, Kristy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Haley. You know he has a few more questions to ask you. Haley?
Yeah, I just love obviously the dual sustainability messaging here. A more sustainable planet, environment, and more sustainable nonprofits that are making their community stronger. Can you give us a sense just of the size? How many shoes are you guys collecting a year, or events are you holding a year? Just want to get a sense of the scope.
Yeah, so we partner with anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 groups a year just on the Funds2Org side. That fluctuates depending on the time of year. So back to school season is always a busy time for us. I'm collaborating with schools. Springtime right now, we're partnering with a lot of, animal rescues, churches who are getting ready to do some mission trips over the summer, summer camps that are looking to fundraise. So it's always fluctuating the time of year. So, some months we have a lot more events going on, and some months are a little bit slower. We did just release some new impact numbers, and I can tell you that we're about to celebrate our 12 years next month.
Very good.
Yeah. And right now we are up to the latest impact numbers I got in January. We're up to 37 million pairs of shoes kept out of landfill.
Awesome. Wow.
37 million.
That's great.
Yes, insane. And then I know on the Sneakers for Good side, the reporting is a little bit different because, we're just working in the athletic sneakers division over there. But in that side, we have helped marathons, run specialty stores, and all of their kind of sustainability and community partners raise over 16 million on the Sneakers for Good side.
Great. That's great.
It really adds up. I mean, these are little things that when you add them together really make a difference. It's always interesting to me.
Every step counts. Every piece of clothing counts.
Right.
And what happens to the shoes? Where do they go? Can you give us a sense where they're reused and that sort of thing?
Yeah, great question. So we partner with 4,000 families of microenterprises. I'm sure a lot of our microenterprise partners overlap with you guys, but we have about 4,000 families in our microenterprise network through the reuse economy, and we are currently in about 21 countries. That number also fluctuates. For example, Haiti is one of our biggest countries that we export to. But with the kind of civil unrest that's happening right now, it's been difficult to get loads into Haiti. Similar with, maybe Ukraine, it's been difficult getting product into there. But we usually have about 20 to 25 countries that we work in at any given time. And a lot of times it has to do with the climate. I know during COVID, it was difficult for all of us to get product to our partners. And, there's nothing more heartbreaking than everything that we're facing in our day to day, but then also, not being able to get our micro enterprise partners what they need to do their day to day. So COVID was a very difficult time for every single person on this planet.
And these are really a valued commodity in these countries, these used shoes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's some misconception about what happens to these shoes, but these are actually really valuable and support families and people trying to feed their family, that sort of thing.
100%. Yeah, I being here with the company for 7 years, I have done so much reading, but I had no idea that I think it's 85% of the world global population relies on the secondhand industry.
Mm-hmm.
That is a staggering number. That is billions of people relying on the secondhand industry. And, here we are just, two small players in there supporting that industry. But when you look at Haiti, only about 12% of the population in Haiti has cars. So walking is a main mode of transportation, especially in some of these other developing countries. A good pair of sneakers goes a long way. And our version of what a good pair of sneakers is in America is vastly different to someone who's walking to work every day.
Good stuff. And do you see opportunity for growth here in terms of doing more events and collecting more shoes? And what's your guys' outlook here for the near and for further down future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are millions and millions of pairs of shoes right here in America that are ready and need a second life. I think there is plenty to go around for all of us who work in the reuse economy in this industry. I see growth as, kind of like a unlimited thing. We are always going to have a need in the circular economy to keep resources in use. And that means, buying smarter, and that means keeping it in use as long as possible. And then when we're done with it, making sure that we're responsibly getting rid of it. And I see that as something that's not going to go away anytime soon. With the way our environment and our climate and everything, I think that we will always have a need for the reuse economy and our part that we all play in it.
That's great. And I think one of the interesting parts of this is, it's little steps taken by these organizations, but they can really sort of magnify the small steps that they take by telling their story and having a broader impact by getting other people involved. I'm just wondering, you seem like a student of good stories. I'm wondering if you have a specific example of a organization or a partner who did a specifically good job of telling their story or had a really good story to tell. I'm just always curious, on the positive end of it, who's doing this well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, much like you guys, we work with every facet of people. We work with all ages, young to old, and we work with all types of groups. But a couple stories that are right off the top of my head: in our conference room, we have a photo of a family out of Montana who raised $12,000 collecting shoes all across their state. They wanted a sustainable fundraiser. They did other fundraisers. So we were just, one small part of their adoption journey. but it was just a single family that were looking to adopt, and they wanted to offset the costs of adopting. And they collected shoes as one of their main fundraisers. And I thought that was the most insane thing. Like, you are collecting 20,000 pairs of shoes. And that just goes to show you there are so many shoes that are out there that are ready and need to be given a second life. I also think about one of our first stories of the company. This is before my time and my tenure here, but we had a whole campaign for a grandma. It was called Andrew's Van Campaign, and he was collecting shoes. Him and his grandma were collecting shoes so that he could get a disability assisted vehicle for him because he was in a wheelchair. And they raised $20-some thousand to go towards his van and a ramp for him. And I just thought that was such an incredible story, that shoes could drive so much of that story to buy him a new van. And I just love that story.
Can I just jump in right here? Because those two examples, it's almost like funds to individuals as well. So
Yeah.
how much of that could be like a family or an individual who's trying to work toward a purpose? Because that's lovely. I love the whole story of adoption. Just who would think of that, to offset the cost of adoption, because adoption is expensive. So
Yeah, I think the reason why those stories are so impactful is because of, the thousands and thousands of pairs of shoes they collected to raise money, which is why they are so big. It is a very big, undertaking to collect 20-some thousand pairs of shoes as an individual or as a family. So those just make those stories all that much sweeter. But for, a regular school group that, let's say, is collecting for their playground, because they want to build a new playground, they can raise $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in one shoe drive collection, because the more shoes you collect, the more money you're going to earn. So I think there are plenty of those kinds of stories. But when you see, a small family or individual collecting 20,000 pairs of shoes, you're just like, wow, the power of the people, the power of an individual, the power of one voice, of one story is incredible. And they told their stories well, and the community rallied behind them. And I think that, being in this digital space that we live in today's world, I think that we crave community more and more, because it is something that is a little bit harder to find in real life, in IRL, if you will.
That was my last question. Really
Very
interesting stuff and great stories.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. We want to thank Kristy Morris from Funds2Org for all of her insight, and we hope that you have been inspired by the ideas that we've explored today. We encourage you to search for sustainable solutions that you can pursue so that you can be a good steward in your neck of the woods and beyond. Haley?
Thank you, Monica. A few reminders to our listeners on the way out. If you want to stay connected with us and stay informed about the latest sustainable solutions, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and please share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. Together, we can make a difference. And remember, change starts with awareness and action, so let's keep the conversation going. Feel free to reach out to us on social media, through the website. Share your thoughts, ideas, and stories with us. We'd love to hear from you or maybe partner with you. Until next time, remember, it's a big world out there, but every small change counts. Together, we can build a better, more sustainable future. Thanks all.